these buttons here and have liveness begin. There's the button there. Greetings, everybody, and welcome to Discussing Tabletop. It's, of course, July 22nd, 2023. We are slowly making our way through summer. I hope everybody's having a good one. I guess whether it matters or not, because honestly, you know, I still recall those days that summer actually mattered for something, and then, you know, that's been forever since that happened.
Yeah, I mean, back when school was a thing, summer was like a different time of life. Now it's all like, I'm still doing the same thing every day, despite the fact, but it's just hotter and more miserable.
I mean, you know, at the very least, college was something that had that too for a while when I was doing that. So,
yeah,
it wasn't.
I mean, I just said school in general.
I know, but it certainly wasn't the like the traditional school kind of feeling to it. But anyway, as much as I could say it's the doldrums of summer for releases, it turns out it's not really that. I mean, there's plenty of releases. It's a little quieter week than it was last week, but we do have some things to talk about, and there are things going on in the tabletop world. You know, movies are big, video games usually aren't, but apparently tabletop is, you never know what the heck it's going to be.
I mean, like everything else, it's usually really big around Christmas.
I guess it's also like people are saving some things up for like Gen Con and stuff, because I guess that's the big announcement time. But
the cons, mark when the releases happen.
Yeah.
Although Comic-Con was just...
Comic-Con just happened, and some things were talked about in the tabletop world. There was a topic that I saw, but it wasn't enough for me to be like, let's chat about that one until closer to it. Because speaking of Doctor Who, which we're going to talk about, because there was an announcement on the 60th anniversary, they're doing some books for it. I'll put that link in chat right now. The Doctor Who Magic Commander decks that we knew were coming out, there was some talk about that and showing that off at Comic-Con. You know, I guess people have to have something there, even though there's two major, or I guess it's technically two separate strikes, but they've united as one. Technically, right? Would it be considered one strike or two?
What do you mean? What's a strike?
The actors and the screenwriters both are on strike.
Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah.
But I'm like, like the writers went on strike, the actors went on strike too. But I'm like, if it's kind of also for similar problems, but more in solidarity that it went along with it, does that count as one strike or two still? I don't know enough about unions to comment on that part there, but
probably the same strike, because I think they're both SAG-AFTRA. They're both based around SAG-AFTRA.
Okay, but anyway,
basically same union, different problems. They're same union, but like.
That's why if we didn't really hear a lot from Comic-Con, we didn't hear a lot from Comic-Con. There's no writers and/or actors to promote anything there. Promotion, yeah. Anyway, I hope everything ends up well for those people and they get like some reasonable negotiations. But speaking of Doctor Who, because we're a tabletop thing, we're not actors or writers. We can show support, but we're not there.
I mean, technically, I'm an actor.
That's true.
I technically get paid for acting from SAG-AFTRA.
There you go. See, I'm nowhere near that. Anyway.
Because of something I did when I was 2.
It's a thing. Strangely enough, I also heard someone that people that have very, like, depending on the content you make, there are content creators that would fall under some of the stuff that they do, too. I think I'm very far from that.
Yeah. They cover, like, news. I was wondering if I had the thing that had the SAG-AFTRA logo on it near me, but not. I don't.
Yeah. Interestingly enough, though, like it does hit into our world here in the content creation world to a degree, but more on the YouTube side and like people that do very heavy scripted content for that. My scripted content is read up on some things, make a few notes, and then know where to hit when I'm then like have something in front of me referencing the stuff that I studied up on. You know, so I can summarize things and you know, give you a succinct bit of information that includes multiple sources put together. That's my tabletop stuff. This is, I just mess around on the fly. Except I've read up on these things too.
Yeah, we have a mild structure. Just a bit more freeform. I mean, that's why it's kind of a podcast type.
I like it this way.
Yeah.
So, Doctor Who. It's its 60th anniversary, which is really cool. It's going to be happening in November, and Cubicle 7, which I'm guessing, does the Doctor Who role-playing game, which I have heard about, but not for quite a while. Honestly, it's like one of those brands where, since it has been probably a couple of years since they might have put out products, but I might have just missed it, honestly, is what I can say at this point in time. But regardless, the big announcement is, hey, 60th anniversary, they're putting out 2 books. It's basically...
What is the premise of the Doctor Who role-playing game? Do you know? Like, you play as the Doctor, or as a Doctor companion, or is it just in the universe?
I gotta be honest, I read up on this some time ago, but haven't checked up on it in a while, so I can't remember. Let me check. You take on the role of the Doctor and the companions and stuff like that. Okay. You could be a Time Lord, you could just be a companion from somewhere. Human tends to be the one. But again, like, he's also traveled with other Time Lords, so you can have multiple Time Lords in a kind of adventure-spanning thing. And you don't necessarily need... I guess the Doctor's the idea of it, but you could also just be some other Time Lord that does the same thing, and it's just, oh, it happens to do that, you know? So I'm guessing it's, like, there's a little... There's freeformness to it, but it's the idea of doing the basic same thing of, like... It's sort of like with the Star Trek Adventures RPG, you're not the Enterprise, but you're another starship, and you're basically the main crew doing it. It's a similar kind of thing. You're the main people doing time travel crap.
Yeah, wibbly wobbly time wine.
Yeah. So these books here are basically informational bits from the 60 years of Doctor Who that are made pretty much for game masters, but also players and fans and stuff like that, and giving information on how to, like, interweave it into your kind of games and stuff a little bit. The first book will focus on the first 8 Doctors, which were pretty much, I think, the entire first run of the TV series. That was the original one. And then the second book goes from the War Doctor to the Fugitive Doctor and beyond, which I do know a little bit about Doctor Who. I've seen some of it, definitely, technically I've actually seen a lot of it, because it was on a lot of the older stuff I ended up watching when it was on, like, a retro channel. I watched a whole bunch of it randomly, like, a couple years ago, with a DVR.
I watched the modern stuff up until the Scottish Doctor. I got partway through with him.
I didn't mind the Scottish Doctor, but I did end during him. But it was also a time period where I kind of stopped watching TV, so that was kind of the issue.
It was kind of the thing that, like, at the time I had caught up, and I'm like, I'll wait until more comes out before I watch again, and it never went back.
Yeah, I understand. I was kind of in that time period. I kind of had caught up with things, and it was just like, I was not really watching as much TV, and it just ended up I just never finished it and going beyond. And, you know, I haven't seen a lot on the, you know, what's beyond that at that point in time. But anyway, that's just me. But I have seen a lot of the older stuff, because I forgot that basically one of those retro channels, like, probably like 4 or 5 years ago now, they just went through pretty much all of Doctor Who that they had, which wasn't all of it, but a good chunk of it. And that stuff, sometimes you need a DVR for that. And by DVR, I mean a fast forward button. It's some of those episodes are a lot better than others. I'm sure there are the fans of those things, but there are some good episodes and some bad episodes. It's like watching classic, original series Star Trek.
I was about to say original series Star Trek.
There's some great episodes. There's some bad episodes. And then there's some hilariously bad episodes. Like, it's bad, but it's funny because of the bad.
Spock's brain.
It's so bad, and everybody admits it's so bad, but there's just something... Anyway. So yeah, 2 volumes that will basically be celebrating Doctor Who's 60 years of adventures, built in such a way to share a lot of information from 60 years of Doctor Who, and include it in such a way that you could adapt things to your RPG. I think it's going to be probably more setting informational stuff than anything, but it will give a lot of probably hook information and things like that that'll help out in, building it, which is it's good. And I think that's a good direction to take the stuff.
Yeah.
And it does look... And apparently they are coming out with more books and stuff for the entire thing. I just looked into it, and they've got a pre-order for the 3rd quarter of this year for a book for it. So they're still doing stuff. I just haven't noticed it. I'll keep these guys on that. Congratulations, Cubicle 7. You get to be added to... I'll check your page for stuff. Maybe you say things in your blog about releases and stuff. We'll bookmark you and add you to my news list. I'll be nice. But anyway, so yeah, that's Doctor Who. And yes, at Comic-Con they did announce stuff on the magic thing, but we'll talk about that in I think that's September, October that's coming out. So we'll talk about it then when we actually have a deck list rather than some spoilers. But another thing is Chaosium, the people that bring us Call of Cthulhu, is not doing another role-playing game. No. They're doing a Call of Cthulhu board game. Yes, let me bring to you Horror on the Orient Express, which has this...
I thought that was going to be Cthulhu-based.
I mean... It's still Call of Cthulhu. It's just a board game.
I'm saying when you posted the docket to us earlier, you didn't say anything other than Horror on the Orient Express.
Yes.
And I'm like, I'm not gonna look into that. I'm just gonna see if this is a Cthulhu thing, because I think that's going to be. I think it's.
Well, a lot of these again, I've been trying to be better at my title. That I say it, you can look up it vaguely anyway. Horror on the Orient Express. If you had probably Googled that, honestly, this might have come up, or something.
Probably would have.
Apparently Call of Cthulhu. There was a adventure book on that. So I guess they've taken that tabletop role-playing experience and adapted it to a board game. Cool.
Okay, so there's a campaign book on it,
yeah. So, I saw that it was an adaptation, but I was curious if it was someone did a story or something, but no, it makes sense that it is. Because it's called Call of Cthulhu, that it was one of their adventures that people really liked. I guess it would be doing Tomb of Annihilation, the board game or something, for D&D, which I think they did actually do. Anyway. So, it's a cooperative game. You and other investigators have to survive on a doomed train. You must discover, hunt out the cultists, and stop performing their hideous rituals on a train before it reaches its destination. So, yeah. I mean, it's, I guess, very along the lines of Call of Cthulhu or Arkham Horror, or maybe even a little bit of Betrayal at House of the Hill, Silence of the Betrayal. That you're probably the game sets up. Here's the opponent. Here's some random stuff. there might be building your train randomly or stuff like that. I assume we're going to see more about it in the future. And this is really just an announcement on it.
Okay, I found there was a link at the bottom that had a little bit more information. It says there, so it's a cooperative game in which you and others investigate and survive on the Doom train. Wait, did you read that already?
I did get that a little bit at least. That was co-op.
Yeah, but it's co-op, but yeah, so it's like you develop skills, gather items, talk to passengers, discover clues, and ultimately decide the fate of the train.
Well, I'm guessing
you can learn a spell or two. So, yeah, it seems to be kind of.
There probably will be things in place to make every run slightly different. Is what I think there would probably be. Like,
yeah, this seems very much horror on the horror on the House on the Hill.
Betrayal on House on the Hill, or
Betrayal.
Like,
that's the word.
Yeah, or maybe like Arkham Horror was a lot like that too,
yeah.
where there's like a lot of there's very basics of the game, but like the enemy and how things roll out because of cards and draw make it a unique experience every time. And it's just this one's on a train and it has a really cool kind of like eldritch train on the front. So, I mean, honestly, it's a neat idea, and it does sound interesting to try out the board game version of it. Like, Call of Cthulhu is always one of those games where I'm like, I would test it out. I don't think I would be in a campaign from all the stories I've heard for it, but for like a one-shot or short adventure, maybe you could get me for that.
Wait, is it like just not fun?
It's not that it's not fun, but it is a very kind of brutal system in a way, because it's deadly and it drives you insane, and like, you know, things like that.
Yeah, there's lots of ways to lose your character in Call of Cthulhu. I mean, if you're going to play Call of Cthulhu, you basically have to have like 2 backup characters at a time.
I don't mind playing games like that, but I'm not a big fan of campaigns like that, is what I kind of mean. Like, I've had enough of those in olden days, you know. I'm okay with it now. Yeah. That's my one-shot short adventure kind of experience now. You can get me for that. But for long campaigns, let's not. Personally,
I think I've yet to kill a character again. Not for lack of trying.
I have done it plenty of times before, but more recently, it ends up being that I feel like I'm better at making sure that it's not that it can't happen, but it's less on me and more on the players a lot of time. I feel like that's my onus. It's sort of like, if you do something dangerous where the dice will turn against you, sure. But yeah. I will put those warnings in place of like, this is probably the more dangerous of things, you know, honestly.
Yeah. Same. But, there have been times where I'm like, this will be a very dangerous situation. Do you proceed? And they go, yes. And then they just roll super well. And I'm like, well, that was kind of...
That can happen, too.
That happens to me basically every time I try and put my characters into a deadly situation.
Honestly, it's so hard to judge a deadly situation nowadays a lot of time.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So, that's clicking onto there, not clicking onto where I wanted to click. So, we also have, from Monte Cook Games, has brought us the Wierd. So basically the entire idea is a book that is very universal, because what it is a 10,000 ideas to elevate strangest novelty and uniqueness to any role-playing game. You know, it's got plenty of classic elements to various RPGs. I like the list here: dragons, alien planets, magic, spells, superheroes, werewolves. But they're like, you know, how can we make this a little bit more strange version of that very thing we're talking about there? I like it as an idea because it is like supposed to be very universal. Like, you could use this anywhere, and it's supposed to be like, we're providing you basic ideas that you could work off of. And honestly, it's inspiration. plenty of us who GM/DM out there, you know what, we like to get inspiration on things because, there's only so many ideas that anybody can come up with it on their own. So a little bit of inspiration is not bad. And having a giant book of inspiration.
Pre-order. And I was like, can I buy this right now? That's what I was doing.
Nah, it's announcement on pre-order. They're going to have it out soon. No,
because I'm like, I love these idea kind of books. They're so handy as a GM.
So it's going to be like 100 basic ideas with then at least 100 entries under each of those to kind of break it down of like, here's your basic idea. Here's ways that you can take this kind of basic concept and alter it a little bit. So it's like a chart of various things. So to make it kind of like, oh, here's a dragon, but here's like 100 different ways you can make this dragon more interesting and stranger and stuff like that, or something like that, and
it seems like they have like, if you want to, there are ways to like even like make it more random. Like, just the way it says it, like hanging above the rest. Here's like an example, like hanging above the restroom door is something from the weird unexpected objects list, like a human skull made of blue bone, dull candles shaped like two halves of different people's heads, or taxidermied cuttlefish of impressive size.
It's just they have a whole bunch of different things, a whole bunch of entries, a whole bunch of ways that you can kind of come up with ideas. It looks like they have some charts and stuff too. I love tables to roll on too, because they just add something that you're like, what is this and how can I integrate it?
Oh my gosh. The weird dolphin neck thing is hilarious. I don't know if you can see it in the... Yeah, it's if you scroll down a little bit and from like the link you posted, you just scroll down and you see a few pictures. You see the weird purple dolphin.
Yeah, it's like a dolphin that's kind of like floating in something.
Yeah, it's a dolphin floating in like a ring, but like the ring is attached to like a mech.
Yeah, it's like spraying water on the dolphin too, so it's like keeping the dolphin wet. So it's an out of land dolphin mecha suit that just suspends the dolphin in these rings and sprays water on it, so it's like floating in air, and then just walks around in that. It's very strange.
That's so fun.
But I like it. Yeah.
Fun little picture.
They're definitely fun little images. And about it, if they have a lot more art like that, it'll be really nice to say too. So, hey, thanks Monte Cook for 10,000 ideas, at least I guess. Did we? Honestly, I could check something here. I think we talked a little bit about this. Did we? I'm trying to remember if we talked about this at all previously. Did we talk about Fantasy Age 2nd Edition?
Doesn't ring a bell.
Because I think we might have known it was coming out.
No, okay, so was this the Green Ronin? Was this the company that had that like weird thing that they said they were going to be announcing?
That might be it. That this was related to stuff related to it. I think it was a announcement related to this entire thing. I have to check their articles that came out.
Yeah, because there was a few weeks ago, it was more something by Green Ronin that we saw recently.
Yes.
And they said, like, by the creators of Fantasy Age, I think something was happening.
And it was something, I think, related to that. Oh, it was the game they were secretly making that they were talking about, that they've been working on.
Yeah, that one.
Yeah, and then we... Okay, yeah. So it was the game they've been working on for years. That's why I thought about this, because we were talking about a little bit about Fantasy Age and stuff like that, because I guess it was using their age systems or something. But,
yeah, or it was made by the same person.
Yeah.
Or something.
Officially, though, Fantasy Age 2nd Edition is out. If you're unaware of Green Ronin Press and the Age games, the Age system came about when they did the Dragon Age RPG long ago. And originally, again, it's based on the Dragon Age property, but they wanted something of their own, so they came up with their Age system. which they just called it, which basically was their generic version of stuff at that point in time. So they have Fantasy Age, Modern Age, and a few. I think those are the two main ones that they've come out with since then. But again, it was originally brought about because they did the Dragon Age tabletop RPG.
Yeah, I actually saw a little. I've actually looked at that one a little bit. I thought it was kind of clever the way things kind of worked in that game. That's like a 3d6 system where it's all like you have 2d6 and moves in other color. Mm-hmm. Like if something happens, if that color matches another thing or something like that. It was an interesting system. Yeah.
So it is out already. They'll be showing off and selling it at their Gen Con booth. There's a print available. There's a PDF available at Drive-Thru-RPG. They've got stuff up on Roll20 already for it. And they want to put up a compendium for it up on Roll20 as well, apparently. They're working on. And again, this is their second edition of this. I'm not sure how long Fantasy Age has been out. I'm going to admit that. I know, again, it's that I know the history of it. Fantasy Age RPG. I can probably look that up, though, quickly. And look into how old it is.
I mean, at least 2015.
That's true, at least for...
just based on something I saw.
Yeah.
I'm looking.
Well, it wasn't very easy to find it just with a quick Google search, so I'd have to probably find it somewhere. Anyway,
I mean, let me put it this way: I looked it up. It was put on Drive-Thru-RPG in 2015. So
it sounds about the right time for it then. So around 2015. So I mean, again,
yeah,
7 years.
July 20.
Yeah, 7 years is quite a while, and I think again. I'm guessing the Dragon Age RPG is a bit older than that because there hasn't been a real major Dragon Age game in quite a while. Has there?
No. Dragon Age 3, or Dragon Age Inquisition came out, I want to say 4 years ago, maybe 5.
Yeah. That came out in 2014.
Okay, so even older than that.
And I think the RPG, the tabletop RPG, came out in result of because it was 3 before Inquisition, right?
It came out when I was in college? That doesn't seem right.
Time flies. So, Fantasy Age being their generic system coming out in 2015 makes sense, honestly, And as I was saying, 7 years is a good amount of time. I'm glad, they're updating their system. It's plenty of time for them to have learned from all the other products and stuff they've been putting out and probably advancements they've been making. Cool. They have a bunch of information available if you want to look it up, especially on this thing here where they talk about their class specializations, magic, and all that kind of stuff that they've introduced in their system. It is certainly meant to be it's a mechanical system. That's the thing about Fantasy Age is they kind of have their own setting that they've sort of developed, but it's a lot more meant to be a lot more generic stuff using their age system, which is a very interesting tabletop mechanic system. And, that's the point of it. So, but if you're interested in trying it out or checking it out, second edition's available now. And the Green Roller Press does a pretty good job on a lot of these games. So, I'm going to have to find a link to the actual game and who's doing that. But here is the announcement that I found out about this, and apparently they talked about this.
The Dragon Age role-playing game came out in 2010.
Okay, that's 5 years earlier, so...
Yeah.
Definitely understand that. So here is a link to our next topic, though. That's not a link to it. That's the title of it, because I had linked the page, but then I was looking up the game without the K. Because, yes. It's on Amazon and Target, but I don't know who makes it. Does there Drive-Thru-RPG? like. Maybe Rain City Games here. Rain City Games is a company. I'm trying to find out. Here we go. I'm just trying to find some information about it. So this is out, apparently, the playtest rule set for this Multiverse role-playing game, and I'm just trying to like look into it quickly.
I mean, CMON would be the official Marvel Multiverse role-playing game accessory publisher.
But that's the thing is, accessory publisher doesn't mean you're directly doing the actual books. I'm curious as if they are the ones doing the books, because come on, I don't really know if they do a lot of RPG stuff.
Okay.
Like, that's the thing. I'm just trying to like look up stuff on it. I'm not finding a lot. The playtest rulebook seems to be available, but the physical book has been talked about, and it looks like they talked about some stuff maybe up on, like announced some stuff at like Comic-Con related to it. But yeah, the playtest stuff came out in 2022. It seems directly from Marvel, I guess. Publisher Marvel Entertainment, but it's a D6 system, but that's
written
kind of...
written by D616 Systems co-creator and New York Times bestseller Matt Forbeck. Marvel Encyclopedia, Dungeons and Dragons, Dungeonology, and includes all new chapters by Mike Bowden.
Yeah.
The illustrators from Marvel Incredible Army artists. The core rulebook features all the rules you need. Yeah.
So it seems to be made by like people who are associated with Marvel. And so they seem to be. So I think that's what they did. Is they probably are the ones who like were doing it, but they probably just hired these individuals rather than.
So this the entire thing here is we now have this role-playing game, which again, I honestly hadn't heard about until now, because I guess the reason why is Marvel was putting it out on their own. I don't hear a lot about their physical publishing stuff, their book publishing stuff, or comics at all really anymore. And they released a playtest last year. They're coming out with the official stuff this year, it seems like, and they're directly publishing it by hiring some RPG people on.
Yeah, publisher Marvel Universe. Yeah, you're right. They're directly doing it.
And they've now hired on CMON to do a lot of their accessories and stuff, because it's like a D6 system. They're like making their custom dices and stuff, you know. Probably if they want any like miniatures or stuff related to it, CMON's going to be working on it. Oh yeah, here's a link on their website to their book. Put this in your chat. The Marvel RPG.
Yeah.
It's going to be on
for just.
Yeah.
I looked it up on Amazon to find the information, by the way.
Official digital tool sets Demi playing, official virtual tabletop Roll20. They've got errata, a rules update. I'm guessing those are all the play test. Apparently it's available on Amazon.
Oh yeah, the Marvel Multiverse role-playing game core rulebook is out now.
The playtest rulebook is
August.
Out.
Sorry, and it's coming out August 1st is when it's released.
Yeah, so so it's coming out. The actual physical game is coming out now that we learned about it.
Yeah,
like none of the news places I go to have talked about this, which is a weird thing, you know.
When is Gen Con?
Coming out in August.
Okay.
So we might have heard something about its release when Gen Con comes out, you know.
Yeah, that might be when they're going to really push it. Like, it's out now. Because some people do that. Some people do that. It's out now, like it just came out.
Yeah, but I'm just surprised because I have like 3 news sources I usually go to and a lot of personal pages then combined to figure out what I'm talking about for the week, and no one has talked about this. Or at least I've not noticed it. You know,
I'm glad I looked it up on Amazon that said available August 1st.
Yeah, no, that's good. It's good to know the like release date for the physical book. Well, the playtest rulebook's been out, but they charge $10 for a paperback there. Oof. For a playtest book. It's a big publishing company, so I don't know.
Yeah, playtest. You usually don't want to
charge for a
monetize.
playtest. Yeah.
Yeah, because that means you're like restricting your input to people who can pay for it.
Mm-hmm. It's very old school, but again, I think the thing here is, it's Marvel.
I mean, that made sense. To be fair, that made sense back in the day when you had to like publish things and like give them out to people, because at that point, you have a paper. It is literally just digital,
I think the issue that's $9 for the physical copy of it, though, it's the thing too. So I don't know. I didn't see if there was a digital version of it. I couldn't find it because I guess it would have to be through maybe Roll20. Honestly, you click on the Roll20 thing here. It's still purchasing the playtest, but it's apparently saved $10 on the thing for that. View all products. I try like a Roll20 because it looks like they don't have a PDF though. That's the thing I can say. I don't. Yeah, they just have bundles that are costly. Again, $10 for the playtest on Roll20 too. So, yeah, no, it's charging for it. It feels very old school, and that's the thing about it is if it's coming directly from Marvel, who is on their comic book side, I'm assuming this is coming from them, who have an in-house publishing company. They're probably going very old school on the way of doing things. I guess it's another reason we haven't really heard about it, because again, it's a pay-for playtest.
Yeah.
And it's not very. That wouldn't be very. I'm assuming. I don't know how popular that is. I mean, Marvel as a thing is popular. I'm just curious. Like, sure, they're a Brandon superhero game. How is that going to compete with all the other superhero games? How are they going to stand apart? Even if you paid for a bunch of really good game designers.
I mean, that's the thing too. Is like when it comes down to it, like, you can basically make any Marvel hero in any in any generic superhero role-playing game.
I could pull out Mutants and Masterminds. I could pull out Aberrant. And both of those systems, Trinity Aberrant now, both of those systems are superhero building systems. Aberrant's, if you want to have something that's probably similar to this, since it's a D6 system, that's a D10 system. You want something similar to that. That's, a very similar system to the old White Wolf systems, because they were the people that originally made it. If you want to take something that's a D20 system, Mutants and Masterminds, it's a D20 system. It's a superhero building system. Hell, if I want something...
Yeah, and it even says, like, play the heroes or create your own. So it's like they're kind of just building another superhero building thing.
Hell, I could pull out something like Besom, which is a freeform system. Granted, I keep talking about this. Besom is best at anime, but guess what it also is? A fucking freeform system. I could put anything together with that system. It doesn't have to be anime. It's just best at that. And it's the same.
More like it's designed for that, not even it's best at that. It's just it's good at anything, because anime can be anything.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing is, like, yeah, it can be anything, and it comes down to the same thing here is. Thank you, alarm, fire thing. Don't mind that in the background.
Yeah.
It's just, it's cool to see this, but, like, they're doing their own thing. I'm glad they're hiring on actual people that make role-playing games to design it.
Yeah.
But...
Oh, yeah, I doubt it's going to be bad, but honestly, at this point, it just seems like it's kind of just more of a, we want to get... Because this thing, I don't think Marvel has gotten into the... role-playing
the TTRPG market. No. There've been a lot of video games, but like TTRPG, I don't know if they've really dived into that before.
Yeah, so I think this is kind of their attempt to do that, and they're kind of doing it on their own. Although I think that's probably why things are coming up a little hard, because they're using a lot of old school systems. Like paying for things, and honestly, like I looked, it's like it doesn't seem like this is coming out anywhere besides like what they're producing. Like there doesn't seem like there's going to be a PDF.
Yeah. Granted, they are still putting it in comic book shops, which is good, but again, you know what? They have in-on comic book shops. I mean, like, that's the thing.
Also, you know what also often is in comic book shops? Role-playing games.
Yeah, that's the thing, is that's what they are nowadays. Comic book shops are comic book and role-playing game shops now, and like tabletop shops. If I see a tabletop shop, it probably is a comic book / tabletop shop, because that's how those two industries basically work together pretty well. You can't just survive on one or the other, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's basically a nerd shop instead of being a...
So, I'm glad it's coming to their retail. We're not seeing a PDF. They feel more behind times than Wizards does. That's saying something, but
also they're brand new.
it's new.
We'll see.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's new. Honestly, the only digital type thing I see is that you can get a Kindle version.
We'll see how it ends up. It's, maybe it's really cool and really great, and we can be happy about it. So, I don't know. We'll have to see. But, that's our news topics for today. It's time for our deeper discussion topic.
I do want to say one more thing, although because there is a Kindle version, there will be a PDF version, because there are tools I've found online to turn Kindles into PDFs.
It'll be a non-official PDF version, basically.
I know. Yeah, that's just what I'm saying. That's gonna happen. Pretty fast.
Look, I just gonna go for... Do I want to go for the hot take here that there are certainly morally gray areas that certainly it's okay to just look online for something because of some of the immorality of certain companies? I definitely won't argue if you do that out there, folks.
I mean, here's the thing. I'm one of those people who are all for it. So like, test drive something, see if you want to buy it.
I think that's the thing I always say is like, when I can afford something and it's really cool, I will pay money for it regardless if I tested it out somehow beforehand.
Because for me, it's just like, if I'll buy it, but especially if it's like a big company who I know, I'm just like, I'll just look at it first,
So it is actually fire that's going on. That sounds like the fire trucks are going. Anyway, today I had this topic on the list for a while, but I felt like we don't have Momo here, but you are the one to talk about this deeper discussion today because you hit this more than I to a huge degree. You make maps online.
I love maps. Yes.
Because there's two types of making maps. There's in-person online, and I wanted to split these into two different topics. And this is the online play making maps, because this is using stuff online. This is you end up like wherever your map making tool is, however you're designing maps. You end up then you make your map, you throw it up on Roll20 or wherever you're playing. You figure out a way to throw it up on tabletop sim if you're using that, because people do use that, But yeah, it's...
I do want to run tabletop sim adventures, D&D adventure at some point, just to see how it works.
I've seen people do it. It's sort of like... I think you have to have some of the stuff on reference documents separate for like character sheets and stuff like that. But otherwise...
Oh, yeah, you definitely. It's more use it to like roll the dice and stuff.
Yeah. It's an interesting thing for like rolling the dice and having like a very tactile board and stuff like that. I personally, for me, I'd almost want to use it incongruent with like having Roll20, having like Roll20 for our sheets and stuff like that, or for like originally creating them on there, and then maybe like copies of them that you can like throw up an image of on in your tabletop sim game, so you have like a physical sheet sort of put down on the table, but you're really tracking. I don't know. It'd be complex and weird, but it'd be cool looking, I think, is the thing.
Yeah.
Which sometimes is an emergent thing. That's a different topic. Immersion.
And I will say, if you are looking into getting into maps, Roll20 is nice because you can buy assets on Roll20, but the best part, I think, is that Roll20 allows you to then download those assets, and then I usually just make them in a photo editor into a map. if I do it that way, because I find that way easier than manipulating everything in Roll20. Because you can get, like, pixel precision.
Got you. I think that's one of those things is, like, every time I go about usually if I need a map, I usually, and I'm not doing, like, something like Buccaneers, which is a pre-made adventure, which has maps you can find online for it, is I will then start looking up and seeing, like, who has maps they've provided on, like, people put maps out on DeviantArt or various places for free, like, where they're, like, supporting it. And, like, honestly, there's a place for it. Or putting together something. I do have purchased some stuff on Roll20 to, like, put together a map. I can sort of do that. But I've been there where I'm throwing that together, and it's not great, because Roll20 is kind of hard sometimes to build a map.
I found one time a massive catalog of free assets. I should find that again. I have a bookmark somewhere. I'll let you know if I find it. But yeah, most of the time, though, because I've kind of developed my own kind of pixel art style, I tend to just draw my own now at this point, which is fun, too. So it's also, if you're creative, you can draw.
Yeah.
But as for, like, just why, like what are your, like, so what is your thoughts on this discussion? Is it just, like, why to use it, how to use it, when to use it?
I think it's a combination of, like, the idea of, like, when we talk about using maps, it's this larger topic of a map is something that helps, step away from theater of the mind. And that's a discussion, too, is using maps versus theater of the mind. But I think when we talk about making them, you're already planning on using a map, regardless of that part of the discussion. This is coming down to, if I'm online, we should talk about, like, some good tools, too, some suggestions, some things like that help, in general, someone make something and not feel bad about it. This is, I want to make something for myself. What do I go about that? And, there are definitely suggestions I can have. Like, there's plenty of tools out there. We can talk about those. There's map making tools that anybody can look up.
Yeah. And those are great. Honestly, I think Roll20 is, in some ways, in and of itself, just as good as a lot of those map-making tools.
Yeah.
Because they're not really going to do much different than that. Where I like map-making tool, where I like maps is I like just putting them in a photo editor and making them that way.
Yeah.
Even went back when I was using, like, pre-made assets, because it was just easier to go through and, like, well, they just can handle it better. Like, the internet browser is, like, kind of just slow, even for, like, Roll20.
Yeah. No,
like,
and
you get too many pieces on there. It's just slow.
I can see that. I've been there trying to chunk around with maps directly on it. I think it's a thing too that, like, when you're making your own maps, regardless, if you're a great artist, wonderful. That's on you. Okay. Yeah. But if you're not, don't pretend like you need to be. I think that's another big thing about it. Is
you really don't. I made maps without being an artist. I made maps long before I was, like, decided to draw my own and start getting into that. I mean, there's a point where I was like, my whole Bastion Frontier, I used assets for that. I didn't hand draw any of that.
What was it? I think it was some of, like, both during the time period, like both Records of Evil and Children of Wrath. I used, this is as bad as it was, but it worked. I used just the shape-making tools from Roll20 on one of their grid sheets to just make some kind of loose map and be like, here's a hallway, like, it's like,
yeah,
it's not great, but it does the job. Here's some square rooms, here's a hallway, here's some stuff. They're connected together. I'll just pretend there's doors at the end of this hallway,
Yeah, and if you are looking to do something quickly, you definitely need to look into the idea of geomorphs. Have you heard of this before, Dave?
I haven't heard of this at all.
Basically, it's a collection of individual squares that kind of, or that you can then connect together in different ways. So, like, imagine, like, a square that's, like, 5x5 that has, like, a door over here and a door over here, and you can connect them to other rooms that are also 5x5, and basically you can make unique dungeons that way without having to go too overboard on.
It's like a set of tiles.
Placing
almost.
one.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're tiles, so they're a little bit more complete room tiles.
Gotcha.
That you can connect together.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense then. They're you, and that's a thing that like actually comes about when eventually I do want to talk about like more in-person stuff, is like tiles that you can purchase. It's the same kind of way like buying like a tile set from somebody. Those tiles sometimes are decorated and stuff, and I guess it's the idea of like you're using a similar kind of concept, just building it in online and putting together a map somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like, that's granted, you don't get as much of that in like the Roll20 provided, but they do provide stuff like that occasionally, you know.
I think that's why it's important to know the term, because that's like what because like it's hard to find unless you like know the term geomorph. Like until I learned that word, it became it. Like, let me look. I'm gonna now look on Roll20 to see if I can find some geomorphs. But yeah, no, geomorphs are really nice because they're just like, especially for things like city mapping. Like if you have to map out a city, because then you could just get like this road connects to this road and this goes over here, and it's like a whole thing.
Yeah,
so
it's
nice.
It's you can find a lot better tile kind of set, and so it's a better way of like, it's a more universal way of building tiles. So if like if I decide to make a bunch of geomorph tiles, I've made a bunch of tiles that are compatible with someone else's tiles in general. Maybe the art style might not necessarily gel, but at very least physically they will kind of match. And it can come down to like you just say like, oh, this person has different architecture than the other one.
Yeah. Yeah, they have geomorph tiles on Roll20.
Cool.
Yeah, it's just again, it's like it's not super clear what they are. You almost have to look up what it is to get an idea of how they work. But they're something that I wish I knew about back when I was like making more generic or making massive assets. And they're actually a tool I use now when I'm like making things. If I want to make things a little bit more generic, I can make things that connect up. There's lots of ways to do it.
I think it's also the thing is like, you know, because like you can make a map out of anything. I think it's also like when we look at something like Roll20, if you splurge on some of the more expensive, really awesome looking pieces to build your rooms, great. You can also just get the cheap ones that are just like pretty simple images that are like, these like weird square thing represents a door, you know, or like, yeah, this rectangle that's a door, you know.
I would very much say, you know, get a generic asset pack if you're gonna like, if you don't have a lot of money, because there are ones that are basically just like, you can draw out the rooms yourself, like with lines, and then use these symbols that are universally, well, I mean, like, you have to learn them obviously, but they're kind of very common. So like if you download a map, you'll probably see some of that stuff anyway.
Yeah, like usually it's like rectangles where it's either like a single rectangle or two rectangles next to each other that looks like it's in the middle of something. It's a door. You put it on a wall, you know. Things like that. Like, there are plenty of things that have this almost kind of universality to a lot of maps, and these like generic item sets are pretty easy for building rooms. And like, I think another thing is, you can also mix and match, you know, complexity. Put the things in that you feel are important to the room, and after that, you know, you can just use some words, know your description of the room that you have there. Like, if there's flourishing, like, this rectangle is a bed. Just when they go into the room, describe the bed or something there, you know? They'll imagine it as a bed when you're describing, like, a large posted bed takes up a large portion of the room. To you, in the map you provided them, it could just be a goddamn rectangle or something that's maybe, like, colored brown.
Yeah, like, honestly, I think the main purpose of maps, and I'm just going to touch into this just briefly at least, is just to help you, because when you're describing something, I do run into this occasionally where you're like talking to someone and they're like, oh no, wait, he was like way farther away. Now I see why you guys kept trying to shoot at him. No, he was way, that's why you weren't hitting him. He was behind a wall, you know? Yeah,
it's sometimes when you just describe something and try to use theater of the mind, you can, this is something that we all do. We can make mistakes in the way we say something. And maybe it's...
Or just
Well,
Or
I
even
think
just
mistake
someone
is
doesn't
the
understand it in the same
mistake
way.
is the wrong word. I think it's you say something that can have multiple interpretations or can be interpreted a couple of different ways, and then the players can come in and they can either mixed bag interpret it or they can all interpret it the wrong way. You know, it's miscommunications can occur. That's what I want to say. Miscommunications
That's the word. Yeah,
and
miscommunications.
a map can help alleviate those miscommunications because I could put a token representative of something that you're against all the way down that hall or like close by, and they know how close it is. And
yeah,
like, so I think there's two main reasons for having and this comes down to having a map and like some of the reasons for it. Like, I feel like, you know, the big reasons for having a map are, you know, to help out with theater of the mind for your descriptions, to kind of like add a little bit to like, this helps your players' imaginations go in the directions you want. And then it comes down to tactical thinking, combat type stuffs. They have an idea where things are appropriately for that too. Where guesstimating a combat isn't necessarily bad. You're still guesstimating it. And simple combats, that works fine for them. I think we've talked about combats before. You know, how it can be very simple ones. A lot of times, having a map helps for more complex ones. And, you know, that's part of this that we do have to kind of mention here.
And I want to say there are a lot more free aids than people realize.
Yeah.
Especially nowadays. Like, and people kind of get a little bit caught up because they're actually often very difficult to find when just like looking for them on Google. I don't know why this is. I mean, you can get like a map, but there are a lot of like if you go on Drive-Thru RPG, type in like, and then go to like, you know, maps and play aids, and then hit free, you'll see a bunch of stuff, you know, like, so that's the other thing too, is like, it's not as hard to get assets as you think.
I think it is one of those things that there are a lot of people out there that what they will do is they will make a number of very generic free things and they'll offer them on Drive-Thru RPG, and then like, if you like someone's art style, you could look into them and be like, oh hey, they also commission maybe like exact things, you know. I think that's a way of like advertising it. Some artists might do an RPG.
There's that. Some of them are just a company will offer a small selection of their stuff free, and then other stuff will be purchasable if you want to like get more. That's another thing
too. Yeah, I think there's various levels of that. I think the also
lots of,
yeah. Go ahead.
As far as like creating it goes, there's a lot you can get. Like that's the one nice thing about assets, and honestly, in some cases, just having something can actually be like, it just can help and cut down on miscommunications, and it's also just like sometimes nice to know what's going on for a player. Like, you don't have to worry about you can focus on the visualization in your head rather than like the visualization of spacing. Visualization is one of the harder things for most people to do.
And, like, I can describe a room, but, like, having all that description of the room doesn't mean that they're going to imagine the same room. Two people might imagine the room completely different, because I could describe 4 pieces of furniture. The arrangement of that 4 pieces of furniture could make a difference on how the room is actually laid out. But they're just going to imagine, oh, it's laid out this way or it's laid out that way. It might not make a difference, but each person might not have it. While if I have, like, something representing it on a map, you know where, like, this would be where the desk is, this is where the bed is, this is by the bed, this is by the desk, so then I can arrange that a little bit more mentally. And I think for talking maps too, we do have to go beyond just tactical, because I think tactical maps, that's something that is actually a really good tool for things like Roll20 or many online tabletop, virtual tabletop virtual tables.
Yeah.
It's a very easy way to make tactical maps. That is the best way. It comes up a lot. It's very good. It's technically easier than it is in physical life. That's something I'm going to tell them. I will talk about it on another day, but that's I don't want to do too much topics in one day.
Yeah.
But
you are bringing up a good point, though. We need to talk about city maps overland maps, and in case of sci-fi, star maps.
Even like star maps, I would call like your world maps more like that, you know.
Yeah.
Because like overland maps would be like, this is a region I can explore with stuff marked on it. That might be not that big, you know. Yeah, city maps.
Yeah.
Those are pretty big and important too. That's kind of a little bit harder to design a lot of times because those are a lot more artistic a lot of times.
They're also often a lot less important.
Yes.
Unless you're doing something like a city defense or something like that.
I mean,
because most people just see, okay, there's lots of cool stuff in between, but there's these places that I need to go. You know?
Yeah.
These are the important
certainly, on the average day, when a player's in a city, they don't need to know where the city exactly is. You can mention... I'll take a good example was I had players going and traveling in Buccaneers. They were going to, like, these places and cities and stuff, and granted, they weren't doing a lot there, but, like, they had some time in between things. There was things like, you want to know about the districts that are there. Are there any things that we can do to kill some time? You know, and I can tell them about this. Do they need a map of it? No. But, yeah, city defense things. But also, like, if a adventure, or maybe even an entire campaign, is based off a city, and in a city, certainly a map would be very important there.
At that point, it's your world map, you know?
Yeah, in a way, it becomes your world map. Or, you know, again, even if it's just an adventure as part of the larger campaign, it's still part of that world.
Okay, sorry.
I understood the need to sneeze.
Yeah, it was also one of those drawn-out ones that wasn't, like, coming.
I feel like in this case, certainly you can find a map online and just make it your own, like, you know, things like that. There's plenty of, like, Pathfinder, D&D have had city maps. You could find one and just rename the locations and stuff like that. That's a cheat you can do. You could also similarly keep it very simple. I probably wouldn't suggest this in Roll20, but taking something like Paint or Photoshop or something like that, where you have a drawing, or something like you have a drawing tool, and just outlining stuff with a very simple drawing. Doesn't have to have a lot, but basically giving an idea of where they are, like some dots or letters or something, and like an outline of your city, some, you know, these are some major areas, these are some major regions. That just, even something that simple as that could help a lot without the details of here's all the streets and stuff like that, that can be helpful in tactical combat, but you don't need to see all that, honestly, a lot of times, and, you know, when you're zoomed out.
Yeah, and for, and if you're talking about the world maps or the, you know, even the system maps or whatever, or sci-fi, there are a lot of, free and paid tools for making, like, those world maps. There are a lot. Those are actually, if anything, like, I was talking battle maps, those are like, but those kind of systems, I'd probably say those are really probably where you would want to spend money if you were, like, limited. Because those ones you can get some really good stuff if you just put in even a little bit of money.
For me, I would also suggest if you're doing things like a system map or a world map, that's when not only am I running this campaign here, I'm probably going to plan to use this campaign in another world. Like, city maps, even region maps, those are so much smaller. Like a region map, honestly, similarly in Paint, you could just, you know, squish some green in one spot, squish some brown in another spot, and call it like grasslands and farm, or forest and farmland. You know.
Yeah. The hard part is the world maps are the ones usually people want to make.
Yeah. It's again, like, as much as you might want to make it, like, either if you're going to spend money for it, that's the best bet, you know, or again, like, you know, that's up to you if you have the extra money and you want to have a little bit of that flair. Or again, like, if you're planning on something a little bit larger scale-wise, that's when I talk about it. Like, the times I have done world maps are when worlds that I want to use more than once. You know, that's most of the time I've done it.
If you want to use it once, there's still, like...
Oh, I mean, again...
You still might have an idea, you know?
That's true. If you have an idea and you have the expression, I mean, I personally, when I've made world maps, I've just copied them. It's been in person and stuff like that. I've written them on stuff, you know, where I could be like, look at this map that I drew on a piece of paper.
Yeah. There is one I'm actually going to even shout out called Asgar, AZGAAR, which is a free one that's not bad.
Okay.
That's one of the better free ones for like a world map. It's kind of a. Let's see, does it allow you to edit it? I know it's like it's a really good randomly generated map too, which helps. I think there's ways to edit it and stuff if you want.
That's nice.
Yeah, you can. You can edit the side. Yep, you can edit it. Jeez, this is so.
That's pretty good then, and then like you can, you know, there's ways of uploading it to like Roll20 or other stuff, where you could just share it like, you know, the Discord or wherever you're doing stuff with your players. You know, they have the image there.
Yeah, and you
like,
can save it. You can save it and download the image. That's one that I would definitely recommend if you're strapped on cash and you want a decent overworld map, and you want like a decent looking overworld map. This one gives you a hell of a lot of options for free.
And you come up with your basic random and then do a couple edits here and there to things to your liking.
Yeah, I think there's ways to even draw it. I haven't gone super hard into this. I just found it one time, bookmarked it, and I'm like, I love this thing. I'm saving it.
So again, like, it's. I feel like the big thing about online maps is they are going to take. I don't know. Depending on your medium, they may or may not take longer than an in-person map. I think that's the thing I could say. Because an in-person map, depending on the situation, could be very easily drawing. Like, I'm going to say, like, when it comes to larger scale maps, it's much easier just to draw those. Tactical maps, I certainly think I actually would suggest online play anyway, that those are easier technically. Tactical maps.
Yeah.
I've fucked around with trying to make tactical maps in real life. That ain't easy.
Yeah, those I would, for tactical maps in real life, that's when you, like, buy a set. Honestly, you usually buy a grid board and then you draw it out, and then you do the erasers.
That's one way. We'll talk about it. That's a thing to talk about. But like,
yeah, we'll talk about another way. I did some of that too, so
I feel like when we're talking online, tactical maps are a little easier here, and those bigger world maps a little bit more difficult. But you can still do them.
I actually think tactical maps are a little bit more important for online play because you can't as easily describe. Because I can't go like, okay, over here and then over here. Like, I can't place things out on a table even to, like, point out where things are.
Even on this camera here, when I'm pointing, it doesn't really help because it's an image on a thing. You're not seeing me physically, where I could actually, like, you know, much better point it out. If I'm pointing randomly in my room, that doesn't help Worm understand where I'm trying to actually point here and, like, get a visualization and stuff like that. Where I could, like, if I'm in person and I'm, like, describing it a little bit, I can add hand motions, gestures, talk about. And there are things you can do in person that help a little bit for theater of the mind, certainly. And even then, like, tactical maps help in so many ways, a lot, that... And again, not always needed for every combat, but there are plenty of them, especially more complex ones, where tactical combat really, really helps. And, like, I think that's, harkening back to previous discussions that we've kind of mentioned about things we've talked about, like, take a good old system, 4th edition D&D, which requires tactical maps. And, you know, there are plenty of systems like...
I know you keep saying you want to run that, and I'm all like, what are you going to do about that?
I have some PDFs that I can just copy maps out of, honestly.
Understandable.
Yeah, that's what I do. Sometimes
totally
I do.
Fair.
That's sometimes what I do to Buccaneers, because you can't always, like, Google and find people that have, like, cut maps out online. I can just go to the books and use the snip tool from, you know, your computer to be like, I'll just make a JPEG of part of this PDF and just put it in the thing.
That makes sense.
It's
you can also, there are so many free options though for tactical maps and even overland maps and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, that's my thing. But also you have to be willing, able, well, you have to be willing. I'm not going to say able. You don't actually have to be that able to make something decent.
You just have to be willing, and that's usually the hard part.
And I think that's the other thing, too, is with online, because you can get a lot of free base maps and stuff like that. Like, I can pick up, like, a simple jungle map. Guess what you can do? Add assets to it. You can take something someone has as a base map and throw some tables on it. Add a door to part of a building. You know, you have those assets you could probably have. And you know, it doesn't have to perfectly match the art style enough to get people thinking about, oh, there's a door on this building that, like, in the back or something that you added on, or there's something here or there's something there, and you can start changing it and making it a little bit more of your own, that you can start with something. It's like we've talked about that you are as limited as you want to be when it comes to the creativity of it. And, you know, you can keep it simple and still have something cool and, you know, go wild. Because, honestly, map making can be a lot of fun, and it doesn't have to be complex and difficult. It's as complex and difficult as you want it to be.
Honestly, don't be me, the person who enjoyed the map. Well, unless you are me, because, like, I enjoyed the map making process so much that I got so perfectionistic about it that I'm like, I'm making my own. I can't stand the fact that this isn't perfect. But if you don't have that kind of interest in it, it's good enough. It looks good. Like, I mean, my first foray into it, I felt it was pretty good, despite the fact we're using just assets from stuff. So,
I will always remember
at the time.
I was in a game where we had this same beach scene. No, I was in a couple different games where the person used the same beach like 4 different times. That they kept using it for, but just would put stuff different or have us come from a different angle. Like, oh, we came down the beach coming from the left. Now it came down the right. Now we're coming down to the shore. You know, just change the angle you're coming in. You know, and just put a couple extra things on there, and then you'd be like, wait a second, this is kind of familiar.
I mean, literally, video games do that all the time.
Honestly, you know, it's sort of like, it's the joke of, like, there's plenty of, like, games that you'll, like, randomly come across a pre-made asset. It's the same kind of thing. Game studios sometimes, anything that's going to be, like, junk on the side of it that, you know, you've designed once, or you can just purchase from a thing, they'll throw in there, you know.
Let me put it this way. If AAA studios don't have the time to go around and make custom assets for everything, you probably don't either.
You know, they will make the important stuff you're going to see, but that stuff that's kind of to the side on the background, oh, there's a cereal box over there. Pre-made asset! You know?
Yeah.
You know?
Copy-paste.
Copy-paste!
In all forms of art.
Yeah. It's a wonderful thing. Someone somewhere made something, just copy-paste after that. But, you know. Anyway, that's making maps online. I think that's a good dive. Oh.
I do want to shout out, like, I do want to say one more for space maps. Oh gosh, is there one that does a random generation? I haven't actually.
Haven't really looked into that as much.
Yeah, I'm wondering if there is a way to do this one easily. Is there a make your own feature here? I think there is. Anyway, there's a thing called Traveler Map which I think can make it, but I'm trying to figure out how to get to it.
Diving in more appropriately into it.
Apparently a Kickstarter for something.
Ah. Oh, good old Kickstarter.
That Traveler Con. Okay, that's probably something.
Traveler.
Okay. Anyway.
Yeah.
That might be something we talk about.
If you remind me when it's coming out, honestly, because I may or may not see.
I'll look into it more.
Yeah.
Anyway, there are ways to. There are things you can. There are tools. I know there's a Stars Without Number one that's also not bad. So there are a few of those as well, just for because those maps are a little bit different in the way you need to create them. Also, I technically am making one of my own, but I don't know if I'm ever gonna like get to a point where I release it. maybe I'll throw it out for free, but if it's good enough.
Yeah, it's a challenge of, like, you know, what you're making is it good enough sometimes, too.
Yeah.
And I think that say that is, like, it's as good as it needs to be when it comes to a lot of these things sometimes. So just keep that in mind. Anyway.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Have you had any kind of role-playing stuff this week? I had one thing.
No, I need to do things more, and I've been meaning to contact people and see if I can get something going, but I haven't.
I kind of been the same way. I feel like I need to organize some more stuff. I just haven't been.
My life calmed down again finally, so I'm all like, okay, now I'm getting the itch again.
It's like, for me, I know I end up having some time here or there. So I'm like, you know, I should really use that time to, like, you know, add some more content to my content list. Like, I could, you know, look into starting another game or something with people. But I did have Buccaneers this week. It went well. They are assembling basically a group of they're assembling a fleet to take on an invasion of their homeland, because the leader of their homeland is like, that's not a threat, and they're like, maybe it is. We should probably make sure we deal with it, even in case something terrible happens. It sounds like it's a threat. You know, your overconfidence is a slow and insidious killer, so as to quote Darkest Dungeon. And they're going and talking to people they've never met before because they're like, you want to help us out? And they're like, sure, at least so far. And that's been the entire adventure. They went and talked to people. It was fine.
Here's one. Sectors Without Number is a nice free one.
Okay.
That one's for Stars Without Number. And it can be adapted for Stars Without, or Traveler if you just wanted to, like...
I mean, isn't Traveler a very similar system to Stars Without Number?
I mean, no. Basically, the thing is that they're the only two they're the only two free-form sci-fi games that I know of. There are some other ones but they tend to fall more into the we do everything and not so much. But
I thought there was mechanically some similar stuff in there, but maybe I'm wrong because it's been a while since I played the other.
No, one of them.
Maybe it's been far enough apart between them.
They're both a 2D6 system. But
see, that's why my brain kept putting them together, because they're two of the 2D6 system. But yeah, I think that's what it is. My experience with Traveler is more recent, and my experience with Stars Without Number is like years ago at this point in time.
Yeah, that's all there is about in similarities. Like, they have very different ways of looking at the way the system works and stuff.
Okay, I have to keep that in mind.
Yeah.
Their similarities are they're both 2D6 systems.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I think that's a good spot to end it there, because I don't think there's any much else to dive into. We talked
talked a lot about that. I mean, I have I could give you a whole topic. I could give you a whole monologue about geomorphs alone. You know, like, this is something I am into. I research and look into this stuff a lot. So if you ever want to do another topic on this,
hey,
let me know.
That's why I figured, you know, as much as I think Momo could add to the map making discussion, I think you were the best person to be there for the online map making. Because
Yes.
As soon as I was looking at the topics and I saw that, I'm like, I remember the Traveler game. I know Worm. This is the point for it. You know, this is a great topic for just the two of us. But thank you for joining me, Worm.
You're welcome.
I'll give you a shout out, the weekly one.
Yeah, you can find me on twitch.tv/DiamondWyrm or @DiamondWyrm on Twitter. Those are the most important places for me right now.
I can spell today. Did I spell today? I didn't spell right.
Today. I win.
There we go.
That was a terrible pun.
I don't know how I misspelled DiamondWyrm the first time. I somehow did. I probably just simple mistake. It's typing. You know. Usually I got things that like scream at me with like little red lines that are like, "This is incorrect," and I'm like, "Oh, hey, that's incorrect." I made a mistake while typing.
I don't think you heard my pun.
I did not. I was busy figuring out my brain.
You said I can't spell today, and I said TODAY. I win.
Oh God. I think the better joke was, when can you ever spell? But that was a good one too. I would have gone for the assault on myself. Insult. Oh God. Doesn't assault.
Self-deprecating humor also works.
Yeah. I am here most days of the week, save for Sundays usually. If you're looking for tabletop-related stuff, that's Tuesdays, Thursdays, in the early afternoons, Saturdays in the mornings. Of course, this show in the Saturday afternoons. The live show is the Buccaneers Shackle CS Motion Wednesday evenings, and then I do some variety Twitch streaming for games on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. Monday will be some of that Little Witch Academia game, and I think I talked a little bit about earlier today. I might split it up because that game is fun, but I don't know if it's a great game to like stream for like 3 hours. Maybe it's like you play a little bit of it and switch off to something else kind of game.
That game seems like it's going to be a little grindy at some point.
That's the thing, is like I feel like that. That's why I'm like maybe doing a little bit of it and like, you know, at a time might be better, because honestly I don't know how quickly you find the other keys, because that's the thing, is trying to dive into the places where you level up and stuff felt a little grindy, and I like 3 keys anyway, so I'm like, yeah. But I might split that up with a little bit of that and then something else. Maybe a little Fallout 4 on Monday. And then I've got the Prey Randomizer as my other game that I'm going to be doing later on the week. I think that's everything to shout out. We'll let Worm finish his call. And I will say...
Sorry about that.
It's okay. Calls can be important.
It was my mom, which is why...
See, that's why it's a calls can be important. Family is very big with the answer always. Anyway, everybody, I hope you have a great rest of your Saturday. Thank you again, Worm, for joining me, and see you all either Monday or next week or whenever you want to join me again. And until then, farewell, everybody. Have a great one.